there's so many different ways that all of us can find our way to connect to the oneness. You know, when I was a child, because there was so much unhappiness around me as a child, I would run to the local park and I would sit under a tree or something and feel the healing of the tree, which of course it got very popular in the period of the 70s where people were running to sit under trees. But this, for me, this was all way before, anything was being taught anywhere. So by the time I was 21 and started to work for the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain, people were, basically mediums were trance mediums. And you had supposedly to be 60 plus. And so when I turned up at 21, it was like looking at me disdainfully. It broke my heart. I felt, like I was shunned in so many different ways. But once I opened my mouth and started to give the messages, which were completely always accurate, actually, I started doing that on buses. I had to take myself to school and home on the buses when I was 7 because my mother was in hospital having surgery and things like that. And I would be getting messages for people on the bus, and it took all my courage to kind of run up to them and say something like, "Don't worry, there'll be a letter next week," something simple like that, and then get off the bus as fast as I could because I was embarrassed. But I did that because spirit guides told me, tell that person. They would badger me. And so by the time I was, 21, I got more courage to talk to people and tell people about their lives. Today, people ask me, they want their soul structure coding. Such a difference. I mean, back in those days, it was like, am I going to get a new job next week? And of course, people still have those questions. But today, more people are much more spiritually aware. They've all had some kind of alien consciousness with Star Trek and things like that. And, of course, a lot of us have had encounters, and I have many with the Greys and the Arcturians. But none of mine were really bad, but I needed it. I needed to have the encounters with them in order to understand that we are entwined with two species. Spirit guides told me many years ago when I was braiding my hair, I think I had braids somewhere around 10 years old. They told me that we were our species was entwined with 2 other species. And by then I'd had a lot of encounters with the Greys on and off the ships, and occasionally with the Arcturian. And so I knew what they were talking about, but I didn't understand a lot of it until I was a lot older. Have you had any encounters, anyone?
Any what? Any what?
Any encounters with aliens?
This is Claudia in Texas. Oh, yes, we have. My experiences have been with the Orions and the Sirians from those 2 constellations. And what the information that was given about the Orions is that they came to the Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago looking for gold. And they found white powder gold in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley. And the Orion prince that found this wanted to keep this planet secret for his own personal use, and decided to change the DNA of the monkeys on this planet. So he made them smarter so they could operate the mining equipment and get the gold for him. They were instructed to worship him as a god. And that's how we came into the part where we're slaves to the god, to bow down and worship. And as time has progressed, these Orions live for thousands of years. So he could appear as a god in any civilization or any time period he wanted and still be the same person, just wearing a different disguise. So now we bow down and worship to quote-unquote God in church, beg for help, give him all the money that we earn or work for. So we're just basic slaves and doing his bidding. Once we wake up and see this reality, the earth will change. But it takes a lot for a person to say, oh, I go to church and my God is real. And you go, yes, he was real, but it was a ploy to get you to be a servant, a slave. And that's quite a bit for people to hang on to. Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, so you're basically talking, Zechariah Sitchin's research, right? The bottom line here that I've always searched with my encounters with the Greys. I'll give you a brief experience of it. I was about 3-ish when I saw the first one, and my mother and I both thought it was a little boy with golden hair at the foot of our beds, which I mentioned to her when I was that age, and she was amazed that I saw it, and she thought it was a spirit, and I didn't know who it was because I've been talking to him and playing with him. So I thought. I don't recall it other than seeing him standing there at the bedroom door. And then later, drifting out of the window and up to spaceships was quite common. Waking up outside the building. I've got a lot of this in my book, My Journey into the Oneness. So a lot happened to me where I was taken aboard and tested. And basically, I, like everyone else, had a tremendous amount of fears. And what they did, for example, I had been held in the bushes by the older boys when I was 7-ish. And there were spiders all hatching out, little baby spiders hatching out the laurel leaves. And I was creeping and crawling for ages. And so they took that and they put me in a room covered with spiders of all shapes and sizes. And I remember screaming and screaming. And then quite suddenly, the room wasn't full of spiders at all. It was sheer white. And then I realized that that was imagination. Something in me clicked, and I knew that what they were doing is placing the horror in my mind to see how I would respond. Over time, I learned that whatever they showed me, testing me emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually, was all about checking my DNA. I also realized that they had checked my DNA through many eons of ages. And I also knew that they were looking for a better DNA strand aspect that they could take and integrate with their species to repopulate, or I should say populate, another planet. And as a result of that, I actually was made pregnant when I was 15 and a virgin. And they did to me what they did to Jesus' mother and father. They made a baby outside of the body and put it into her body. And I knew this when I was 12, and I'd learned about sex and all the things that go on for my parents. And I announced to everyone, Jesus was not made in the womb. Everyone thought I was crazy again. But, of course, once we learned ourselves to make a baby in the Petri dish, then and put it into the woman, and the woman's life form would nurture it and survive it, I went on to realize that what they'd been telling me was absolutely true. And my actual, I don't call her a half-breed, but that's what people do nowadays, or hybrid child. She's on another planet, and she's had 3 children herself now, of which they're my eggs, but somebody else's seed. She doesn't have ovaries, but she has a womb. They're still experimenting on making another species cross-section between themselves and us. And when I asked, the oneness about how many times we've been, in quotes, interfered with or changed, they said we have been changed as much as 18 times. So I can't prove that. I have no wisdom to prove that in any sense of the word. I've only got that they told me that. And when they told me we've been changed 18 times, I said by the same people, and they said, of course not. Which still didn't tell me anything. So when you talk about, Zachariah Sitchin's kind of information, his stuff is really good because he read the old papers and the old tiles and all the things. And he did the earth a goodness in being able to translate that. And I do suggest people read his books. I did read them all, and I felt as I was reading them that a lot of it I already knew thanks to my spirit guides, but there was a lot of tidbits in there that I think everyone should hear. That the ultimate thing is we're not supposed to really erase the light and the dark, but rather harmonize them. And everywhere I look, every day of my life, I see it going on. From terrible things like someone killing someone like the other day to amazing things like a whole bunch of people going out and getting birds covered in oil and cleaning them. We have extremes of personalities and characters. We have thousands of perceptions on differences in our opinions about our lives because we live in different styles, in different countries, in different periods of, for example, we've got people living in the Amazon who still think a plane is a god flying over. We've got people in the Pacific Ocean who have made wickerwork planes and still praise it for when, out of the blue, the Americans turned up with planes to use those areas as landing sites for fighting the Japanese. They promised they would go back. They never have until recently. Some people were filming and went to an island and found them there, still worshipping a plane made in raffia and palm leaves. So you see, our consciousness is very limited, and we have every opportunity to learn more. And the brain is expanding, and our bodies are getting bigger. And if we're just not so damn lazy, excuse my language there, but that's how I see it, or like I've done 10 years in school, I don't want to learn anymore, we start to let the brain deteriorate, and then we start trying to meditate, but we're not active enough, and we're not productive enough, and we're too judgmental. That's my opinion. Got some opinions about that. I feel like I'm doing all the talking all the time. Tim, you got a question for me?
Yes, I have lots of questions. Do you know where you're going when your physical body no longer works?
You mean when I'm dead?
Yeah.
I've been clinically dead before. I was 35 and I had Parkinson's disease. It's a hereditary gene thing. My dad had it. My grandma was like Muhammad Ali. Her father had it, and then before that was someone else, but it wasn't called PD then. So when I manifested it, the very first time, I wondered what happened to me because I froze, basically. I couldn't move anything. It happened twice. But in between, I had all these terrible head shakes and rolling pill shakes and tremors and stuff. And my doctor put me on some pills, which I didn't know anything about, and which he was my friend as well. Turned out to be heroin-based drug. So once I had taken too many, because I kept taking one more because my shakes were coming on again, the result was I took too many and I died. And I said to Spirit, I don't want to be here. I can't do this work. You've got 35 years of me under your belt. I've never had any freedom to be me kind of thing. And they were saying, you just started your work. I'm saying, don't tell me that. And finally, I said, I'm leaving. I'm coming with you. And they went, okay. And at that point, I felt like, I'm letting the team down. I felt guilt. And guilt made me say, well, you've got to give me something good. And that something good ended up being in India, where I was teaching, and learned a great deal about myself. And came back with a higher consciousness. I brought with me the divine consciousness back, which they'd given me from the Holy Host, as I called it in those days, which now is just the universe. And in doing that, I've written a lot of books. I've got about 12 books. I've written a couple of screenplays that were going to be made, but they didn't have enough money. Coming of another sort of Christ figure and things like that. And so I've got all this stuff that I download from the oneness. And so I don't see myself passing back into heaven or the astral or anything like that. I see myself as integrating back into the oneness, this joint energy where all things are known. And given time as before, that joint energy will find a common factor in an area of improvement where we'll all bother to incarnate again, here or somewhere else, with a dynamic that will cause us to question mark our evolvement. I don't think the oneness will ever stop evolving. You know, it needs to. And the core energy, which I wrote in my book, about Einstein's theory of quantum entanglement, I do know that everything is entangled and everything. You can do something here on this planet and not even know that you are affecting things somewhere else, but you are. So everything is in constant movement, and movement is friction, sound, resonation. And what that ultimately means is that there's growth and destruction in another sense too. What was is gone, we don't need it. And what was that is needed will arise again in a new form so that we can have another go at it. But basically we're evolving all the time. How do you think about that, Tim?
Yes, I agree that I'm aware that we've probably lived millions of lifetimes as we evolved, like from the things that started in the ocean and through the plants and the birds and the fish and all these things that we see in this physical realm, and that now we're in these human bodies right now, and we may have been the what we call aliens in previous lifetimes. Yes, I see us as evolving in this physical realm. Mm-hmm. Do you pay attention to your dreams?
Oh, yes. Every dream. In fact, people write to me all the time asking me to interpret their dreams. You know, in the word of a picture, it's 1,000 words, okay? So let's say you dreamt you were kicking a ball. I would want to know, number one, what position were you in? Where were you standing? What was your background? You know, I was on a football field, okay? Were you looking at the grass, or were you looking at the people I have to draw sometimes things out of people because they don't really realize that every single thing that's in that dream is a symbol of self. Okay, so for example, if you saw green grass, I would probably, knowing the person, assuming they're not too well, I would say to them, you're looking at your nervous system, you're looking at rejuvenating your nervous system, Green is the color of healing. Was the grass short or tall? Comes in. If it's short grass, then, we're short on that energy. We need some more. If it's tall grass, maybe we've got too much energy and we need to use it in a productive way instead of sitting on the sofa or being a couch potato. So just to take that simple thing as an example, some people are very clever and they can remember long dreams. I used to, years ago, write all my dreams down, and even now, sometimes, occasionally, I'll get that book out and read them, and I'll go, aha, there's a little clue there to today, because we could dream something long before it ever actually makes any sense to us, even when someone explains it to us. I had someone I actually was doing that with a month ago at a convention, and she wanted to believe her dream meant that things were going to improve. And I had the unfortunate position of having to say to her, I'm afraid, no, it's the opposite. Things are going to be taken away from you so that you're free to receive more things, was the end of the interpretation. And when she finally heard all that, she went, oh, that's going to be the second time in my life that's happened. And I said, yeah, because we have cycles. We can't have the same all the time. Otherwise we get stuck. And she said, well, I am stuck. I'm really stuck in a rut now. I said, well, that's why you had the dream. So, some things can be very simple.